It is hard for us to imagine what this kind of money actually means. This year alone, $10 billion is the amount of money in lost economic opportunities due to traffic congestion in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton areas. And that number rises to over $47 billion when factoring in the social impacts of the diminished quality of life for commuters sitting in that gridlock. The information comes in a new report from the Canadian Centre for Economic Analysis, which also found that the GTHA has seen the number of vehicles on the road rise 37% since 2001, compared with 17% outside the region. If you've been driving in the GTHA since the early 2000s, what is your experience with the amount of time you're spending in traffic now versus then? We'd like to hear from you. 416-360-0740 or toll free 1-866-740-4740. Joining us with their expertise on the subject, Nadia Todorova, Executive Director of the Residential and Civil Construction Alliance of Ontario, for which the study was conducted, and Teresa De Felice, Assistant Vice President, Government and Community Relations for RCCAO South Central Ontario. Teresa, Nadia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jane.
Nadia, let's talk about these numbers and how they are negatively affecting the economy and our well-being as a society. Put these in perspective for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Jane. You know, as you rightly pointed out, congestion is something that impacts everyone directly or indirectly. I'm sure some of your listeners are stuck in some sort of road congestion right now. So we wanted to really quantify the impacts of congestion, but really do it in a comprehensive and long-term sort of way. And we wanted to look at not only the economic impacts of congestion, which, as you just pointed out, are staggering and critical, but also look at what is the value of congestion from a social impact standpoint. And we wanted to get a sense of how bad things are right now in 2024, but again, equally important, how bad they can get by 2044 unless action is taken. And the report really solidifies the case for that sustained, long-term, and consistent need for investment into all kinds of transportation infrastructure to ensure that we have people and goods moving. We need improved roads and transit across the region to end this congestion crisis. And that investment and action really need to be sustained for years to come if we want to fix this problem.
Right. So if we continue on this path, give us a picture of 2044.
So if we continue on this path, we're looking at congestion in Ontario costing us $145 billion. That's, again, economic impact and social impact. And that also means we would lose over 500,000 jobs to congestion. And then if we're looking at just the GTHA, by 2044, if congestion is not addressed, we're looking at almost $110 billion impact just to the GTHA alone. And, you know, it's also very important to say that, you know, particularly given the population projections for the region and the province, we cannot afford to be complacent because, as the report suggests, and as I just pointed out, that complacency and lack of action will have serious, tangible financial and social consequences for all Ontarians.
Right. And I will get to your phone calls in just a moment. 416-360-0740, 1-866-740-4740. Teresa, you hear firsthand about the quality of life issues from CAA members. And when you poll your members for surveys such as the worst roads, the annual survey, how much is traffic gridlock affecting our quality of life?
Oh, it's creating a huge impact, and there is this frustration and the ripple impact too to safety, right? Being able to get around and navigate the road safely. I think, as Nadia mentions, those social costs were on quality of life, and then add to that sort of what happens when you have so much congestion and road behaviors are as a result of that frustration. So, you know, we hear from our members all the time, as you mentioned, the CA Worst Roads program highlights, you know, it's one of the top 3 reasons people vote in that campaign or nominate a road in that campaign is a result of congestion, as well as through other surveys we do that just genuinely show the impact it's having in traveling even small amounts of distance.
And Teresa, I know from speaking with you when you release the results of those surveys, people weigh in on that, and actually things are done to improve worst road situations as a result of your survey, right?
Yes, we do find, although, municipalities don't love to be on that list, they are responding to it and realizing that that infrastructure that Nadia talked about, there's the infrastructure investments needed in helping to try and get a handle on this situation by investing in building more infrastructure, but also that infrastructure needs to be maintained at a good quality so that people can navigate the road safely. And so, we do see those investments in sort of some of those really bad roads that are adding to those problems because people are trying to either divert or they're having to slow down or navigate situations like, hitting big potholes that ruin someone's day.
Right. Pat in Toronto, what would you like to add to our conversation?
Well, I'm interested in the 2044 because I'll be 100 in that year. But the other aspect is we've got too many people trying to travel on the roads. And why don't we look at the solutions that have been done in other parts of the world? London, where I understand if you want to drive into downtown London, you pay a big price through a higher fee on your license, etc. That's the way you deal with these things. But if there's one thing that drives me crazy, and I live near Eglinton, we've got these bike lanes. And I walk over to Yonge and Eglinton frequently. In the last 2 years, I might have seen a dozen people on the bike lane. And, this is such a travesty. It's such a waste. And when you walk by buildings that are going through the planning stages, you'll see, they're going to be 2,000 units, and there will be 300 cars, but there will be 15 or 1,800 bicycles. This is not Amsterdam of the North. 70-year-olds are not going to be riding the bicycles. This was a total con job as far as I'm concerned by the planners. And I agree with Doug Ford, but we've put all this stuff in. It would cost millions to rip it all out.
That's what we're hearing, yes.
And the people who designed it should be fired. I mean, we need Elon Musk up here to solve the problem. I'm just being facetious.
No, but I take your point, Pat. Thank you. It's always nice to chat with you. Nadia, what about that? I mean, are we trying to fit too many ways to travel in our limited infrastructure?
Well, there's no single solution to congestion, right? And that's why I think the report does a great job of showcasing how important investing in infrastructure is. And when we also talk about investing in infrastructure, we're not saying invest in one kind over the other. We need everything. We need transit. We need transportation. We need roads. We need bridges. We need transit. So it really has to be a fulsome conversation. We can't kind of pigeonhole ourselves into a specific type of infrastructure because, again, as Pat suggested and as I mentioned earlier, the population of this province is going to continue to increase, and a growing province requires a growing infrastructure. And again, I think that's why this report is so valuable because it really showcases what inaction and what complacency will mean for the province if we don't take those investments and if we don't take that action. And one last thing I want to mention is, and the report really highlights that, is if we don't have a handle on congestion, it's an issue that could spread outside of the GTHA and outside of Toronto to the rest of Ontario, again, because we're going to be seeing that population growth.
Based on something that Nadia just said, Teresa, how far behind are we in growing our infrastructure from the CAA's point of view?
We've done several reports over the years about the growing congestion problem. And, even myself representing CAA on various task forces over the years on this issue, some of it way back in 2013 was to sort of say, how do we just even keep congestion levels where they're at? Never mind trying to get ahead of and eliminate congestion. And I think in a growing city, in a growing region, you look at cities around the world, there's a certain level of congestion. But what we're talking about is critical levels that are crippling to the economy. And as this report highlights, the social impacts of that. And so the road repair backlogs is a problem. The government's now trying to, play catch up with, major investments in both road and transit infrastructure. and building out the various transportation networks to make sure that people can get around in the most efficient way possible.
Back to the phones, and Frank in Concord. Frank, you're on the air.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
I've been on the 401, at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, you're with me.
Yeah, pretty much, and it's packed. And the Trudeau wants 300,000 new immigrants, taxpayers and voters, to come into the country. You know where they're going to come? To the GTA. We're in for a mess coming up.
Thank you for your comments. Let's go to Ed in Burlington. Ed, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you for getting this phone call. I am 74 years old, and I ride my bike. My new bike has 7,000 kilometers on it. I had a previous one, and I sold it with 3,000 kilometers on it. So all the bike lines are just fine, provided everybody is respectful with each other.
Right. So there are people like yourself, Ed. And are you riding your bike for pleasure? Do you ride to get to work?
All of the above.
All of the above. Well, that is amazing. I feel like your perspective is a unique one, but it is certainly refreshing and great for you to call in. Thank you.
I know.
Yes, there's somebody 7,000 kilometers, Teresa, on their bike in the last year and a half.
Yeah, and we've seen an increase in cycling, especially over the pandemic, where people were, not driving their cars as much, but, maybe pulling those bikes out of the garages or out of storage in order to get around. And so, I know there's a bit of a controversy over the conversation, but I think one of your callers referenced London and sort of the work that's even been done by Bikeability in connection with the City of London to build out a bike path for those where it makes sense, 5-kilometer trips commuting to and from. And right now, maybe we're not seeing as many bicycles as we are cars on the road, but even Nadia mentioned all of the tools in the toolbox have to be brought out. Investments in transit, investments in roads and bridges, in maintenance, in the operations of the TTC, in proper cycling and pedestrian facilities to help move people as efficiently as possible.
Okay, well, let me ask you both this as your final comments as we wrap up this segment. How do we get there in a connective, collaborative way? Because all the ideas are great, but how does it actually work going forward, Nadia?
I would say that the Ontario government has shown a very strong commitment to infrastructure investment, and that just has to continue. So it has to continue to be a priority. Municipalities need to consider, as Teresa said, the state of good repair of their infrastructure and making sure they're investing in that. And the federal government also has to make sure that infrastructure is top of mind. So we all need to be rowing in the same boat. Mm-hmm. And I would say the most important thing is we have to build for the future. Where is the province going to be in 20, 30 years? And how do we make sure that we have the infrastructure in place for it? We cannot build anything but that. Thank you.
And Teresa, over to you.
We have to be mindful to keep going. I know sometimes some of the decisions can be the topic of controversy, but I think, we have to just keep making these investments, putting shovels in the ground, transit projects, road projects, whatever it may be, solutions and incentives to get people to travel in different ways. I think there's a lot of people a lot of organizations that are looking at supporting employees getting around as well and how to make that work to make the social impact as the report talks about. But we can't let it stop. In the past, we've done these start and stop situations, and we have to just keep going because we are a great country and people are going to keep coming here, and the GTHA is where a lot of the services and the jobs are. So we have to just maintain the course. And as Nadia said, build for where we're at, but also for the future.
A very productive conversation. Teresa, Nadia, both of you, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jane.
My pleasure.
Teresa DeFelice is Assistant Vice President of Government and Community Relations for CAA South Central Ontario. And Nadia Todorova is Executive Director of the Residential and Civil Construction Alliance of Ontario.